Okay, so the first program that we will discuss in the MicroStation Productivity Toolkit is called Cell Manager. And the goal with Cell Manager is to help you manage MicroStation cell libraries. And it has a lot of different tools to enable you to do that. Number one, I have a 3D cell library loaded here. You can actually load multiple cell libraries. So if you'd like to organize or move cells from one library to another, or just see what's available or make changes to cells within multiple libraries, you can click the Select button and choose multiple cell libraries. And then through the different activities that you have on the main dialog, you can do a lot of different things. I'm just going to kind of walk through them quickly. I'm going to hit Manage. And from Manage, you have the ability to look at individual cells. There's a View dialog box. There's a Details dialog box like working units, nested cell names, levels that component elements are on, things of that nature. You can apply changes to one cell at a time. You can also do on some of these commands, you're able to process multiple cells at a time. And when you do that, you're going to want to tag the different cells that you're interested in, okay? You can edit a particular cell. So if you're in here and you want to make a change to it, you can just click the Edit button. The program throws you into that model that represents that cell. You can use any MicroStation tool to edit it. And when you're done, you see this little Cell Manager box. You just hit Done, and it puts you back into the basic interface. You can also delete one or more cells. You can modify them, and when I say modify, I mean you can change color, weight, level, style of component elements. It also has a modify text function that allows you to replace text, change fonts, text size, things like that. In addition, there's a transform feature. If you need to rescale a cell, rotate cells, even change working units and drawing units on those cells, you can do that as well, okay? And you would do that through the transform feature. There's also an export function. So if you're managing libraries, let's say you have a number of libraries and you want to move or copy a cell from one library to the other, you can tag the cells that you want to move, okay? Click export. It'll ask you for the name of a cell library you want to export them to, and you can copy the cells or move them from their current position to the new cell as well. So that's Manage. There's also a function that allows you to create a MicroStation cell selector file from selected cells as well. Lots of different features there. All right. Now, let's close this. The next feature here is the ability to use what we call draw pages. Now, draw pages makes it very easy for you to automatically create cell library documentation. So in this cell library, if we wanted to create a cell library notebook, we can just click Draw Pages. We can hit Draw Pages. And what it'll do is it'll create a new model inside the cell library called Cell Manager Plot Sheet. Now this is not a cell. It's got the property turned off, so it's not a cell, but it exists in the cell library. And you can see here it created individual pages. You can configure how many cells per page. You get a table of contents automatically generated. You hit OK. The next step would be to create plots. Now, you set up your settings so that it uses the plot driver you're interested in. I have it set up to do PDFs right now, so I can hit Create Plots. It will go out, make a plot for each page. Then it's going to combine them into a single PDF. And here it tells you the name of the PDF. You hit OK, and then you can hit Display. And it opens it up, and you know, whatever you use for viewing PDFs, whatever's associated with it, and you can see the table of contents and the graphics and information about each cell. It's very configurable, so you can create custom pages and get as much or as little information about the cells as you might want. So that's Cell Manager. Another feature in this, if you ever get like drawings from outside. Let's say you get an outside drawing that has lots of cells. A lot of times this is good for DWG files as well. Let's say you got an AutoCAD file, you open it up, you don't have the block definitions, you might want to add them to a cell library. There's an extract feature where you can point at one or more DGNs, DWGs, and extract any shared cells or cells from those files and put them into a MicroStation cell library. You can also import individual files and make them cells within a cell library. You can filter cells, etc. If you need to work on cell libraries, this tool is great for that purpose. Okay, continuing on. The next program we're going to talk about is DGN Compare. And I'm going to open up a sample file here in the Compare menu. All right, let's change our, do MicroStation design files. And I'm going to pick a file called newer.dgn, okay? And I'm going to start DGN Compare. And we're going to compare this file, this active file, against another file. And the program will let you compare one file against one or several files. It also allows you to compare selected files. You can change the mode so it'll compare selected files where you might have a whole directory full of files and then a modified version of those files in another folder. You can compare the whole directory. But the idea here is it gives you the ability to compare a file against another file. And you just select the file or files you want to compare it against. And we've got one called older.dgn. And when you've got the files you want to compare selected, you hit Next. And if there are more than one, they'll all be listed here, all the different comparisons. You would just tag the one that you want to compare. And the program is going to evaluate. It's going to look at these two files, and it's going to determine all the changes. In other words, elements that were added, deleted, or modified between those two files. And it creates two types of reports, a text report and an actual DGN report file so you can graphically see what's different. So I'm just going to hit Start here. Hang on a minute. I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to do it in a batch mode. You can run this interactively too, so it'll visit each element if you want to. But if you want to run it interactive, I'm going to hit this, and then I'm going to save my settings. And then I'm going to select this one. I'm going to tag it, and I'm going to hit Start again. And this time it went through and it evaluated the two files. And we get a text report. Gives you the name of the file. It gives you the different elements that it found, whether they were added, deleted, or modified. And if you hit View Design Report, it throws you into a DGN file. We give it a DRF extension by default. Anything that's white or color 0 is the same between the two files. If you see something in green like these two elements, that means they were added. In other words, they're in the active file, but they didn't exist in the file you're comparing it against. If they're yellow, that means these elements have the same geometry, but they've been changed in terms of level, color, weight, or style, some symbology difference. And then if you see them in red, that means they're deleted. They don't exist in the active file, but they did exist in the file that we're comparing it against. And by default, these elements are put on their own level in the file. You'll see here, we open Level Manager, that there's a DGN Compare added, deleted, modified, and unchanged level. And this gives you the ability to easily view the information that you're interested in when you're in these files. So if we, wanted to, let's say we wanted to turn off, the unchanged levels and just see what was different, we could easily adjust settings to see that. So the program's very useful to see the differences. When you're done, you hit Done, you come back to the dialog. There's also a little arrow button here. If for some reason you want to go into the active file again, you can do that. If you want to go into the file it's compared against to see what's in that, you can hit this other arrow. This makes that file active, and then when you're done, you go back to the interface. And again, this can be used on one or several files at a time, and they'll all be listed here. All right. That's DGN Compare. All right, moving on to the next one. The next program we got is called DGN Quick Pick. Now, this is a real simple to understand program. Basically, you can create a custom list of files from any location you want. It's very easy to build this list, and then simply by clicking on the file name, you make that file active in MicroStation. If it's got multiple files or multiple models in it, you can click the individual models. If you pick one that has reference files, you'll notice that the model is listed. Any reference files are also listed. If you want to get into the reference file, you can click a reference file name and make that active. So it's a easy, simple way to move between files that may be in various locations very quickly and easily. So if you find you need to do that, this is it. If you want to change the list of files, all you have to do is click this little icon here. It opens up this file list. You click the select button, and we have our own file selection dialog, and you can resize this. You can see these files come from many different locations. If I wanted to get rid of some of them, I can highlight them like you do in Explorer and just say get them out of the list. So now we're down to 37 files. Hit OK and OK, and our list now updates with 37 files. So it's just a nice program if you find yourself needing to do that, or you have a custom list of files that you need to visit on a regular basis. Next program is Duplicate Element Remover. Now, with this program, let me open a different file here. We'll open one that's appropriate for Duplicate Element Remover. And there we go, demo, and we'll open remover.dgn. Okay, so the idea here is obviously to remove duplicate elements. It has a search only or a report only mode as well, generate report only. This program, like DGN Compare, creates both a text report file and a DGN report file if you want it to. You can adjust the report file options here. If you don't want a text, you just want to see it, you can do that. You can also run this interactively, so each duplicate element it bumps into, you can make a decision whether you want to delete it or skip it, okay? Now, one way that it's very useful is, let's say you want to see what's going to happen if you run it in a batch mode. So you can turn on Generator Report Only. You can hit Start here, and for some reason, apparently I have a report file path that can't be found. So what we'll do is we'll create a text report file, okay, and let's restore factory defaults here. Let's go back, interactive processing. All right, and we got no differing elements found. So I think what the problem was is I might have, let me let me make a little adjustment here. I'll create some duplicate elements for myself to find here. So we'll copy those, boom, and then we'll copy them there. Okay, and then I think we'll have some duplicate. Yeah, we've got two there. Let's run it again, and we'll generate a report only, just to show you how that works. So we've got that. 5 duplicate elements were found, all right? And then we can look at the text report and see the data about what was duplicate. And we also have the design report file, which we can go into here, and you can see, again, the elements that are duplicate. And we also, like DGN Compare, utilize the non-duplicate level. So if I turn that off, you can just see which elements are duplicate that way. The idea would be, once you verify that everything's good, you can then turn off the report only mode and hit Start and get rid of your duplicate elements. In addition to exact duplicates, the program also gives you the ability to, through settings, to adjust what you consider to be a duplicate. For example, there's characteristics which you can ignore. So if the geometry is the same, but the level, color, weight, or style is different, and that's okay, and you want to get rid of them when they're different, regardless, you only want one with the same geometry, you can turn on what to disregard when checking for duplicates. You also have tolerance settings that you can establish so that if an element is the same within a tolerance on vertices or rotation, you can do that. There's also some options to remove linear elements that are overlapped by longer elements. So if you have 6 little pieces overlapped by a longer line, it'll get rid of that. It's a good program for managing that, and it's available in the toolkit for you. So that's duplicate element remover. All right. Continuing on, the next program is File Fixer. And File Fixer is probably one of our best known programs. It's been around for a long time, and its job is to help you repair corrupt design files. Now, corruption takes on lots of different forms. It can be fatal, where you can't even open the drawing, all the way down to just odd conditions, which may cause problems or be confusing to users, that sort of thing. The normal method that people use for File Fixer is if you open a file that has some symptom, like let's say every time you zoom in, these elements disappear. You try to select them and you can't select them. It's just, there's something wrong with this file. No matter what you do, you can't get it to behave properly. Start up File Fixer. If you set it to its default configuration, it will be very safe. In other words, it reports everything from suspicious conditions up to fatal problems. It also, when you use it in repair mode, it's very safe. It only makes changes if they're absolutely obvious. In other words, it's got to change them to fix a particular problem. Otherwise, it'll only report them, so you can make your own choice about what to do. The other factor with File Fixer is no matter how you're running it, there's always going to be a copy of your original file. By default, what will happen is File Fixer will make a copy of the file you want to fix, and then it'll fix that copy and give it an FIX extension. So if I were to run it on this file, we'd take a look and we'd say, okay, repaired files have an FIX extension. That's kind of what we'd expect. Okay, we can look at the report by clicking this, and you can open it up, and you can see a lot of data here. But basically, there's 10 text elements that don't contain any visible characters. Now, this error is a 100 level error, and that's minimal. It's a suspicious condition. It's not that important. If you scroll down to the end of the file, it gives you an idea how important those various things may or may not be. So 100 is just a suspicious condition. This element may not violate any official MicroStation rules, etc. If you had a more serious problem, it would obviously display and let you know about that. All right. So with that done, you go, okay, great, let me open the repaired file. So in MicroStation, next thing you do is you just search for the FIX version of this file. You'd open that, verify that all is good, and then you could do a save as. So that's one way to use it. There's also a search for problems mode. This is used more on the management side of things. If you want to routinely scan your active project files, make sure they're free of corruptions and problems, you can search them on a routine basis. You can set this up to run at night, for example, find problem areas and fix those before they become more serious. So that would be File Fixer. Let's go on to the next one. Next program is Global File Changer. Now, Global File Changer, we call it kind of the Swiss Army knife of MicroStation. If you bump into a situation where you go, you know what, there's got to be a better way to do this. I got 100 files. I got to do the same thing to all 100 files. And boy, it's just going to take way too long to manually open each one and go through it. Global File Changer is likely to be the program for you. It has lots of various tools that help you make changes. essentially you would pick all the design files that you want to process. You can use wildcards on here. So if I wanted to run all the DGN files in this folder, I could just go star.dgn. You can also click the select button anywhere along the line, and you can drag and drop from Windows Explorer. You can, if you're using ProjectWise, I don't have it running right now, but if I did, there'd be a little yellow icon here with the yellow plus sign for adding files from ProjectWise, and you can run it that way. And the idea is to make changes that you want to make. Now, to make that as easy and as effective as possible, we also include with Global File Changer an element selection utility. And essentially what this allows you to do is easily create named selection sets. Once you have those, you can activate them whenever you want by name, and then make changes just to the selected elements instead of all elements in the file. And this selection utility has lots of different things. There's all different element types listed here. You can make combinations of types, level, color, weight, style, even location in an XYZ plane or cube. You can, select elements by database linkages, user data linkages, class of element, etc. Okay? Within each category of element, you have additional criteria that you can use to limit what you're selecting. Like if I click the tag arrow, you can limit the tags you select by the font that they use, the text, the tag set name, the tag name itself, the value of the tag, all different kinds of things. So this enables you to fine-tune and grab just what you're interested in changing. And if I open here, let's say I open a real simple clock.cell file, okay? Let me open the demo file of a clock that I have for this particular program. We'll open Changer, Demo, and clock.dgn. So with this one open, you can see here in the dialog that I have a selection set called Lines, one called Hands, Numbers, Face. So if I highlight this one and I hit Test, you'll see the lines in this file get selected. And that's because we have lines typed there. If I hit Hands, Test, we get the hands, etc. So you can easily create these selection sets. Now, what you would do at that point is you say, okay, now what do I want to change? So let me go to the key in file field. This is where you tell the program what you want it to do with those selection sets. So if I go to this demo folder, I've got one called clock.key. This is just an ASCII text file, and we can hit the edit button. It'll edit it. Anything that starts with a semicolon here is considered a comment. This is where we open the selection file that I just showed you. We activate the selection sets, and we can run any kind of key-in commands we want against those selection sets to change color, level, weight, style, etc. So that would be one aspect of Global File Changer. Another thing you can do with Global File Changer is utilize the custom commands. And it has commands that do all kinds of things. Control-Z, for example, will allow you to flatten 3D files. Maybe you got people not familiar with depth lock. You want everything at a particular elevation. You could flatten it with this particular program. We have a count cells and design file feature, which you can tell it to count all the cells in the file and get you a list of quantities. It'll also create quantities for the whole batch of files that you're processing if you want to. We have an English to metric convert text strings. This is basically the ability to do mathematical changes to text elements anytime you want to. It was originally designed to help you convert English distances and volumes and things like that to the metric equivalent, but it can be used for processing any text element that represents numerical values using formulas and things like that as well. Manage design file settings gets a lot of use, and this program has two features, or this custom feature has two separate items here. One is the ability to check a whole set of files and find any files that violate the settings that your project's supposed to have. And you would simply select a seed file that has the settings that you need. You would then turn on or off the checkboxes for the settings you're interested in. You would run it through 100 files, and let's say only 3 of them had a problem. It would just report the 3 problem files and the settings that are off. The second feature is the ability to change design file settings on the fly. So if you want to not only find them but fix them or just fix them, you can update design file settings here as well. Same thing, you pick a seed file that has the settings you want. You then tell it which of these settings you want to utilize, and then you copy them, you utilize them. One of the features a lot of people like here, especially towards the end of a project, is to change view attributes. You might have people are always changing the view attributes while they're designing or working on files, and when you're done, normally you need to set them up in a particular way. So to meet your standard. In that case, you'd set up one file that has everything just the way you want it. You would then select that file here. You would select that I want to apply what's in this file for all view attributes on all 8 views. You could run it on 100 files in probably 2 or 3 minutes, and all your view attributes would be the way you need for submission. All right, you can change coordinate readout, working units if you need to, all the standard settings, color table, etc. Another one that's on this list that gets a lot of use is modify text. This gives you the ability to change or modify all types of aspects of text. You can change text styles. You can even strip text styles if you want to while leaving the text unchanged in terms of, font and things like that. You can change fonts. You can change justification. And when you change justification, there's even a special feature that allows you to change the justification without the text moving in the file with this particular checkbox. Same thing with text nodes, things like that. You can do any number of search and replace. I want you to find this, replace it with this throughout 100 files. Again, moves very quickly. You can handle a lot of files in a short amount of time. Whatever you might want to do to text, that's modify text. We have a feature that allow you to move elements from one or more levels to another target level. You can set it up very easily and nicely. We have a replace cells feature, which does what it says. It replaces cells. You pick the cell library with the new version of a cell. You tell it what the existing cell name is, what the new cell name is if you want to change cell names. If it uses the same name as the existing cell, if it's cell 1, you can replace it with the cell of the same name from that library. This supports wildcards. So let's say you had, a bunch of cells in here, and any cell within the file that had a matching name from the library you wanted to replace it, you could just put, for example, the asterisk in here, and it would find all cells in the file that had a matching name in the cell library and replace it with that cell. Just that simple. You have controls on how tags are handled. If a cell has tags associated with it, you can copy the tags to the new cell. You can copy the tag values from the old cells to the new cells. Lots of different choices here. You can even orient the cell by the center or the origin during replacement, on and on. So that gets a lot of use and can save a lot of time. We can also scale cells. So if you want to scale all cells or just certain cells, you can tell it which cells you want to scale. You can scale by a multiple of their current scale value, or you can set an absolute value for cells as well. So lots of features like that. In addition, Axiom's been providing solutions using this program and so we have many macros and VBAs. So if you run into something and you figure there's got to be a way, chances are we've already developed it. So give us a call, and we'd be happy to help you with the types of changes you're after. So that's Global File Changer. All right. Continuing, the next program in the toolkit is called Microsoft Office Importer. And I've if I click here, it says it's already loaded, so I got it loaded up here, right here, as a matter of fact, okay. Let me open a little sample file that we can play with very quickly. The purpose of Microsoft Office Importer is it gives you the ability to copy data from Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word and paste it as linked information into a MicroStation design file, okay? You can see here I've got one portion of a paste in here. If I wanted to, and when you paste it, this data is just simple MicroStation text and line work. So if I wanted to open the spreadsheet that this came from, I could just click Edit here, okay? And because there's only one paste in there, it opens the document that paste came from. It highlights the range of cells that I used for that paste, okay? And, we can then edit this and then update the existing paste with the changes that we make. Another thing you can do here is, let's say we want to make another paste. We'll just highlight it. I'll just show you how that works. You copy it to the clipboard. I use Control-C. You come back in. Let's say, okay, I want to get rid of this for right now and I have to do a new paste. And, you have settings that control the level, the color, the weight, the style of the text. You can change fonts. You can have multiple styles. You can control whether the border lines come in or not. They can come in as set up in the source document, etc. Anyway, you adjust your settings as you want them to be. I'll just restore factory defaults here, okay? And we'll do a paste, and then I'll just hit the paste icon right here. And you can paste at a fixed size like I'm doing here, okay? And this is a little note whenever you go back to defaults. It tells you, we paste this as a graphic group. And because it's a graphic group, it's very easy to manipulate as well. So if you want to rotate it or scale it or copy it, just turn on graphic group lock and you can do that. But we have it there. Now, we can zoom in and see it. This is how it comes in from Excel, very simply and easily, okay? If we wanted to change something about this, let's say we wanted the text to be a different color, we actually have a Manage tool on here. We can select this. We can go to Symbology, and we can say, okay, I want the color of the text. I want it to be green. You can change the weight, the level, everything else. We'll go to Borders, and we'll say, okay, we want it always to be, I don't know, we'll make it yellow just to give it something. And then we can apply those changes. And what it'll do is it'll update the paste with the changes that we've just made there. And if we now go back into the spreadsheet as an example, and let's just change, let's just add some text. I'm going to just do a simple, I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, and I'm going to put it over here right next to it. So we've copied some data in here. We're going to save. We'll do, an Alt-F save. We'll save our changes back to the spreadsheet. Then we can come back in here, and we can either, if we paste this so it's automatically paste, we can just reopen the file if we want to, okay? We'll reopen this file. It'll notice that the source document has changed since the paste was made. It'll update it, and you can see we've added the data over in this column that didn't exist before, and it maintained the changes that we made to it. So it's very easy to keep up with. You can paste it so it automatically updates every time the file opens. You can set it up so it manually updates. In other words, it only updates when you want it to. You can change the row, the starting and ending row and column values, so you can increase them. There's also a special feature that allows you to automatically generate columns. Let's say you had a huge paste like, 200 and something rows. You could actually paste this, as dynamically displayed rows and columns, which is a very nice feature with big spreadsheets. Another thing you can do, I pasted this at a fixed size, and you can adjust that in your settings. But let's say, let me undo that real quick, and let me edit that so I don't, okay, and I'll copy that to the clipboard again. And we could go back in, and on paste, if we had a, let's say we had to fit this paste inside this box here or close to it, okay, we could change this instead of a fixed width from the clipboard to scale proportionally, and we could like click down here and we could dynamically spread it out, and we could set it up so that that paste would fit in there, okay, based on our settings again. And if we had, you know, multiple columns and rows, we could dynamically adjust it out. So if I hit paste, you'll see here that with this feature, we can turn on split paste into columns. And this isn't a lot of data. You can also say, okay, I want to take the first 5 columns and make them header rows. That happens to be the case for this particular thing. And now when I click here, okay, you'll notice that it dynamically changes. So if I wanted to make this 2 equal columns, I could just click it, okay, boom. There we go, and I've just created 2 columns. And, you know, with big paste, you can do it all kinds of different ways. So that's Microsoft Office Importer. And I focused on Excel because spreadsheets are used probably more. But it also works in the same way with Microsoft Word documents, where you can, you know, bring in construction notes and things like that. You can control the text size, level, color, weight, style, etc., the font that's used, all those different things. So that's Microsoft Office Importer. All right, now the next program, and I usually just keep it docked over there for whenever I need it. Okay, moving on. So following that, we have Problem Element Viewer. Now, this is a little application. It was originally created to be a companion to FileFixer. And as I mentioned, FileFixer creates that report, and every element in a V8 design file has a unique element ID. So through a unique element ID, you can zoom into any element in the file by putting its ID number here. You can also go walk through the file using these little arrows here. So what's happening as I click this arrow, the ID of the next element showing up, okay? And if it's a non-graphic element, it'll tell you that, okay? So there's an empty tag that we're not seeing here. So I'll go through. Office Importer uses a bunch of tags, okay? So you can see this sheet. So simply by doing that. The other thing you can do is if you want to see graphically the elements that FileFixer is reporting, you can open a FileFixer report file. You select the report file, either HTML or TXT, depending on which type you create, and it'll zoom in graphically to each element from the report file as well. Okay, if I wanted to zoom out here, I could click the zoom out button, etc. Okay, so we can go through the file, we can zoom in, we can zoom out, etc. All right, so that's Problem Element Viewer. Now, continuing on, the next program is called Ref Manager. Now, this program, the name describes it. It allows you to easily work with reference files. You can do all kinds of things. You can not only report reference file attachments and all kinds of information regarding them, but you can also make modifications and changes to them, and it's got a lot of features that can save you a huge amount of time in particular situations. I'm going to go to the demo folder, and I'm going to open a file called sheet1.dgn. This one has some reference files, okay? And I'm going to, just as a note, whenever you're using an Axiom program that processes multiple files, if you ever want to change the currently loaded DGN up here and replace it with the active file, you don't necessarily have to select it or type it in. You can just do a Control-A, highlight this, Control-A, and then delete it, clear that field. And when you tab out, what it'll do is automatically load the active file in this field. So we can get the active file that way. All right. Now, let's say, for example, with Ref Manager, the first thing I want to do is create a reference file attachment report. Well, I could really quickly and easily do it. By selecting that option, it opens up a dialog that lets me choose the information that I want to see about reference files. And there's quite a bit. You can get clipping information, scale, rotation, logical name. You can even find out what levels are turned on and off for that reference file, the level symbology, in other words, the by level symbology, the override symbology assigned to the levels for reference files, the various settings, nest depth, display, locate, snap, all that sort of stuff, etc. This works on both master vector reference files as well as raster files. So you have settings to report on all that stuff. And when you've got it set up the way you want, you just hit start. There's also filters. Like if you just wanted to get data about one reference file, you could set a filter for that reference file. We're going to look at them all, so I'm going to hit start on just this one. There were 3 attachments on this drawing, and I can hit display report, and it lists out the master file name, the model that we're checking. Here are the 3 reference files that are attached with the information that I wanted to know about them. Okay? So that's the reporting feature. It has a couple different reporting features, but that's just one, and you have all those options you can adjust. In addition to that, there are many, many different ways that you can use this program to modify reference file attachments. And this is where you wind up saving a huge amount of time if you need to make changes or adjust things in reference files. Let's just kind of go through some of the things you can do. Number one, you could rename reference files. In other words, you know, maybe you got a set of files, you've got to change the project name to something different. You basically want to keep something, you know, the same. Maybe it's a border file, whatever. You can rename just the file name and extension, just the file name portion, the extension portion, so it breaks it into its various components. You could edit or add or remove relative path information. You can do the full path information, okay? It works on project-wise URLs, etc. Okay, so you can change that. There's a pathing, save path function in MicroStation. How the file is referenced can be done in several ways. Number one, you could do a relative path. So let's say you wanted to change everything from a full path to a relative path, or maybe you just want to save the base file name so it only uses the MS refters or the active folder for picking up the reference files. You could strip it down to just the base file names. You can do all sorts of things there. Where you might find this hugely beneficial in terms of time is, let's say, you know, you got 100 sheets, you got every one of them set up, and you have to adjust the level, which levels are turned on and off for a particular reference file through that 100 sheets. Well, with Ref Manager, you could set it up in one sheet the way you want it. You could then go to level display here, and you could click match. And what you would do is you would go in and you would pick the reference file that you want to match in terms of level display. So let's say we pick Highway 66 here. We hit OK, and it automatically will enter the display settings for global display, global freeze, and all 8 views in here for all the different levels involved. This one was kind of easy because they were all turned on, okay? But if we set it up differently, we could then do that. Now, let's say we wanted to adjust this for Route 66 in a whole set of drawings. Well, what we could do, we've got that set. We go back to Ref Manager. We set the attachment filter so it would only apply to Route 66.dgn as a reference file. So we could do that in a number of ways, but we'll go by file name to begin with. So I'll just type in Route 66.dgn there. Oh, I can't type, but when you learn to type, it'll work. You go DGN, okay. And now we'll close that. So you see with this asterisk, we have an attachment filter in place. We have the levels that we want to change. We would then just pick the reference, the master files that we want to run this on the sheets. Now, I've got 4 of them here with that follow a syntax. I'm using a wildcard. Sheet and a question mark means anything with sheet, one character followed by a DGN. I think I got 4 of them that way. And then I would just hit start, and the program would go out, and it would, you'll see that there were 12 attachments analyzed. Only 4 of them matched my filter, okay, 1 in each of those 4 files. And so it only applied that change to those 4 files, okay. And if I go into my report, it'll show me, okay, level display, and it shows me what it did for each of the attachment. These are the settings that I had established. And then it tells me that the levels were turned on and off as requested based on what I'd set up. So you could go through 100 files in just a short while once you set up your seed file or your seed attachment. All right, so you can do that. You can do a very similar thing for level symbology, bi-level symbology, override symbology. You know, maybe you have to tone down a background file. You want to set the override color to some form of gray. You can set that up here in one file, copy it, and run it just like I did here for level display. You can change raster settings, vector settings, maybe nesting depth. Maybe you got a strip nesting depth, so you could say no nesting or live nesting. You could set the nesting level you want to. And again, all these changes could be run through multiple files. They can be filtered so that they only apply to the specific files you're after rather than all files. And you can go through a whole lot of files very quickly and adjust all those different things. All right. In addition, you have functions that allow you to copy references. So if you're creating a new project and you set up your base set of references that you're going to use on all your sheets, you could copy those attachments to all the sheets and then go back in and run your clipping boundaries as you see fit on your sheets, that sort of thing. There's a new feature, or relatively new I should say, that allows you to clone references too. So if you have, let's say you're doing a roadway design, you've got this alignment, you got all your sheets set up along this alignment, and maybe you have to add a new utility file to this, but then you would have to add it and clip it for everything. Well, with this feature, you can say, I want you to clone an existing attachment, its orientation and its clipping boundaries, and apply it to this new file I want to add. And you can go through in just a few minutes a whole set of sheets and add a new reference with the same clipping boundaries that already exist. Tons of features, very useful in lots of ways. So that's Ref Manager. If you need to do something with references, that's your choice. Ref Merge is the next program. What this does is it allows you to create a merged master and references. In other words, it leaves your original file untouched. It creates a new output file that's the merged result of your master and references. So you have a standalone file that doesn't require the references that may get lost or may not be available or may be forgotten in transit, that sort of thing. It's great if you need to make kind of a here's where we are on this project and you don't want to worry about forgetting reference files or something like that when you send it out. You can pick 1, 10, 50, or 100 sheets to process. The default settings are to give you sort of a WYSIWYG output. You know, what you see is what you get output. It'll run in 2 different modes. You can merge all the elements that are displayed into your file, which is the default. There's also a new mode in V8 that we added. Because you can have any number of models in a V8 DGN file, we've also added the ability to take any external reference file and bring it in as an internal model into the output file. So all the data exists. You still maintain your reference file attachments, but all the data comes from the internal models in the file. So that's another option, which is nice in some cases depending on how you're clipping everything and the elements you're clipping. All right, that's Ref Merge. And again, that can be used on many files. The next set of programs that I'm going to go over are our quality assurance programs. Spec Checker is the one that most people know about offhand. And its job, this is just a sample file that we're going to use, but the purpose of Spec Checker is it gives you the ability to verify that all the elements in a file meet the standard that you define in rules. And the rules are contained in a .rul file, a rule file. We have a program called Rule Manager, and Rule Manager makes it easy for you to create your base set of rules. Rules can be very stringent or they can be very lax. You can customize them to output the exact information you want to the report file. You can even create rules that automatically make changes or repairs or fixes to off-standard elements, that sort of thing. So you can use Rule Manager. Now, just to show you how all this fits together, I created this standards.rule file using Rule Manager, and it created a rule for every element in this file. Now, if I check with Spec Checker this file using this rule, we should not get any violations. And if I scroll down here, you'll see there's no violations detected, okay? And now let's take a different scenario. Let's go in here. There are no elements on level 10. Let's just quickly draw a line on level 10. So we click here, we go boom. We now have a line on level 10. Now let's run the same file, same rule again. And because we didn't have a rule for elements on level 10, we now see there's one violation in this file, okay? And that's how you would use it. And you can open the report file, and it'll give you, in this case, a generic sort of error message about, okay, there's a line on level 10 with color, style, weight, this, and this, and it extracts that data from the element. And you can determine what needs to be changed there. If you're in charge of fixing it, there's also an interactive mode. So if you want to actually make repairs as you're going along, turn on interactive, hit start, and when it isolates or finds the element that's a problem, it puts it in the center of the screen. There's a little blink button so you can find it in a congested area, and you can use any, and your error message will be seen here. And this can be customized, by the way, to say whatever you need it to. And you also have an optional correction that you can assign to rules that reject things like this, or you can use any MicroStation tool you want to make a correction. So it's very useful in terms of finding and fixing standards problems. And once you create the rule, you save them. You can reuse the rules anytime you want to. All right, and that's Spec Checker and Rule Manager. The third program that's related to these is called Spec Monitor, and this is another optional program. And what Spec Monitor does, instead of checking the file after the fact, is it's a program that sits and runs in the background and watches every element that a user adds to the file. It uses the same rules as Spec Checker, but when you add an element that's off standard, it pops up a dialog box to let you know that you've made an error off standard, and it won't let you add the element. So it's good for teaching somebody a new standard or making sure, if the standard's very important, that people absolutely do follow the standard. All right. Spell Checker Plus, that's the Axiom Spell Checker program. It will, it's just telling me the dictionary is not where I got it the last time, okay? And we'll, okay, it tried to open a bunch of dictionaries which it couldn't find. And there are settings here. I just started up a new computer, so I apologize there. But Spell Checker allows you to select your dictionary. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Spell Checker. And there's an English language dictionary that we use here. And that's the main dictionary. And I know it'll have, and then the project dictionary, and we can use a user's dictionary if we want to, okay, and we'll use the user dictionary here, okay. All right, and you can see it has multiple levels of dictionaries. It also has the ability to create a dictionary where if words are in the English language but they're not appropriate for your standards, sometimes certain abbreviations are not allowed or certain words are not allowed used in a drawing, you can create a dictionary that has words that are in the dictionary but you want to say they're rejected if they're found, okay? And I'm going to hit OK here, and I'm going to save my settings. And you know, you can hit check spelling, and what it'll do is it bounces into the first misspelled word. It gives you some suggestions of things you can change it to. You can ignore that, change it for all, add it to the project dictionary, et cetera, et cetera. You can set this up to test not only the active file, but reference files. You can run multiple files. You can run multiple files at once if you want to, et cetera. Pretty good for that. And then the last program in the list is called Version Manager. And Version Manager is an automatic backup program. You set how frequently you want a backup created. You tell it how many backups you want it to recycle. In other words, if you set it like it is here, every 15 minutes I want 8, you'll always have your last 2 hours of work in 15-minute increments. And that's Version Manager. So it helps you make sure that if you need to go back, you can without losing too much work at one time. So those are the programs in Toolkit. I'm going to go ahead and unload this now. I'm going to turn off the recording and the microphone. And if anyone has any questions, we'll take them up at this point in time. So let me first unmute the conference. All right, and I'll go ahead and turn off the recording.